What a wacky weather forecast day. It said it was actually supposed to be raining today, and it basically canceled an event that I was interested in attending, and as you can see, it's sunny now. Now they changed the event to tomorrow, so maybe I'll go to it tomorrow, but let's see if it rains tomorrow. It'll be kind of interesting. I saw these really cool photos that NASA released. I don't know if you guys saw it too. It basically shows the whole Earth, like at nighttime. You can see all the lights and everything like that. Apparently this is the first time they've shown it or something like that. Kind of cool. Makes me wonder though, is there ever going to be a future where like an everyday person like myself can just fly something all the way up there to get like a photo? That would be probably too dangerous, right? Although it'd be kind of cool if they have designated areas for people to do that. Kind of makes me wish actually people would have that for drones. They just had a designated section where you can just fly straight up and straight down to capture photos. That would be kind of neat, I think. In that case, it's perfectly safe and people can get like the views that they want. With all that talk yesterday about training to fly with simulators, I was reading this old article about drones and how apparently gamers are supposed to be really accustomed or would be a really good candidate to fly military drones. I'll link it here, but the title here of the article, it said, "Turning video gamers into the ultimate drone pilots." Now I guess for this it's the usual assumption that if you play video games then you will be good at handling reflexes, doing multitasking and all that kind of stuff. It says here though, the negative in their opinion in the article is they're so conditioned to non-stop action while playing games that they're prone to boredom in real life scenarios. It's kind of interesting because again with the topic of flight simulators and learning through simulation and games and software, I mean for me as a person that plays video games, I know it helps a lot for flying the drone from my experience, just from the fact that the controllers, like at least with the Mavic Pro, they're really similar. Like you guys might remember the other day I bumped into that very brand new Mavic Pro flyer, and you can see when he pressed like the stick, for example, he presses it really hard where it makes the drone jerk really fast. Whereas a person like me, I'm used to playing a game where if you like press the controller that hard, you're gonna fall off the stage, for example, and die. So you wanna always have control over it. Now it might be different for people that fly drones or quadcopters or whatever for the sake of flying, like say FPV drone racers, and feel free to chime in and give a different thought. But for me as a drone flyer, I actually don't get quote bored. Like I don't suffer from boredom when I'm flying it, because my perspective when I'm flying it for videography and so forth, I always have a mind of, okay, now I need to get this shot, I'm flying this, I have to focus on this, so my mind's always on something, thinking ahead of what I'm doing, whether it's trying to be safe or trying to get like the perfect shot. So in that sense, I personally don't get bored when I'm flying. It's kind of funny because a lot of people told me like they get bored flying in the same field and so forth, whereas for me, I always have a different perspective of trying to get a different angle, a different shot, a different mood. I think an important thing too is that the article didn't really distinguish the difference between the type of gamers, if that makes sense, because everyone plays like a different style of games. Like there's first-person shooters, for example. I know the military has apparently video games or software that uses those types of video games to train people like how to shoot and so forth, I suppose. Or same thing, like for myself, I usually play a little bit more the thinking type of games, the puzzles and the strategies, so I guess for me that works better, like for videography and all that stuff. Although I do play a lot of action games that require reflexes, so that basically makes it a lot easier to fly the drones with the controls. How about you guys? Do you guys have any kind of a video game background when you got into the drone hobby? I would assume for people that fly FPV drones or more for thrill and sports, I'd assume they would have came more from a background such as that. Although one thing that was funny I was thinking of in context of this article and yesterday's post about flight aviations and how they have lesser rules right now, or less strict rules. If being a gamer makes it more appealing to fly a drone like for military purposes where they assume the skill sets are a lot better, doesn't that mean flying a drone in general, it's better to have a gamer background than an aviation background, if that makes sense, even though the aviation is way more complex? It's kind of funny to think about actually. Although again, it just makes me think how, in my opinion, a lot of these laws and so forth with flying a drone in an open field, like an area like this, it's not the same thing in terms of making someone have the complete knowledge as if you're flying a huge aircraft with passengers. In my opinion, it's not the same thing, and I personally feel it is a different skill set in many ways. You might need to know the rules per se, but in general, in terms of the skill set, if you're talking about safety in that sense, I don't think they're the same thing completely. And that brings me to my next topic, which is the SFOCs. So as you all know, I've been trying to research about it because if that's what they're forcing people like me to do, to become a commercial pilot in order to be able to fly a drone, then I might as well research it a little bit. Now, one thing that kind of came across my mind, and you guys actually brought up in the comments too, having an SFOC might actually not be the way to go for people that want to fly for fun, because in many ways you still have to operate it every single time as if you're flying commercially, if that makes sense. All the talk about SFOCs though, because I know there's a lot of you that are interested in the process as well, so I figured right now why not talk a little bit about the positives and the negatives that I've discovered so far just based on my research. I guess for the main positives, number one, the positive is you can fly like places that you normally wouldn't be able to. Like say in the downtown area with all the busy streets and so forth, you could technically, as long as you have permission, and the SFOC I guess is one of the first steps to doing that. So I guess that's one of the positives. And the other positive to my understanding is you can now do commercial work. So if you want to actually charge people money selling your footages and all that, then that's the positive of having it. So that's basically the two benefits in my opinion. You can basically fly in restricted areas, so to speak, with permission, and basically you can conduct commercial activities. To me, those are the main positives. In my opinion, that's what a consumer drone should eventually be like. You treat it as a normal camera, just like for most people. But obviously you don't do things stupid like fly it right in front of people's faces and all that. Flying a drone, and you're not supposed to, but again, people like me, I don't care, but in my opinion, it's just a little bit too overboard in terms of the rules. And again, did I break the law by not phoning 911? Because they were definitely within 75 meters of people, buildings and everything like that. Actually, there was an interesting contrasting example there of safety actually. I didn't catch all the footage, but there was actually a little dog there that you might have saw. And for whatever reason, when a gentleman walked by, it went crazy. Like it looked like it was gonna bite him or whatever. So the owner had to, like, you know, quickly get the dog back and so forth. Now in contrast, you have there was a little kid flying a drone with his parent in sight. So which one's actually more dangerous there? The drone or the dog? Now again, that dog is just an example of, you know, things happen. You don't know. You could be fully prepared. You just don't expect things to react. So should that be a reason for me to say dogs should be banned from all parks? They should stay 75 meters away from people. To me, I mean, that's kind of the connection I think regular people who don't fly drones have to think about. All right, so thinking about that, what are the negatives of getting the SFOC? Now again, keep in mind, I'm thinking of this more from the perspective of a recreational flyer. I don't intend to like transport people or fly heavy cargo type of drones, but it's basically to answer the question or the criticism of many people who don't fly drones who say, hey, if you want to fly a drone, go get a license. It's that simple. Because a lot of people have the perspective that getting this SFOC is kind of like getting a driver's license, which in many cases, that doesn't seem to be the case at all. So for the first negative, basically my first one would be it's very repetitive in the sense of apparently you have to fill out these applications every single time you want to fly. So imagine I want to fly again, like somewhere like here, for example. Absolutely nobody here, or just like that kid back there, for example. Apparently you have to fill out those forms every single time, like 20-page forms explaining how you will manage the drone, the safety measures. So it's very repetitive just to fly something very simply. At the same time, it could take, to my knowledge, about 20 days for the application to be approved. So you can't exactly just decide, oh look, there's a great weather right now, I want to fly the drone. No, this has to be done in advance, so it's very commercially. So that basically kills the fun out of flying a drone. I mean, imagine driving a car where even though you have a driver's license, if you just want to drive for fun to get from one place to another, to do a fun road trip, you'd have to give them a detailed plan of exactly where you're driving, who's your backup, what's your emergency contact number. I mean, don't you think that's ridiculous? So again, it's not just like getting a driver's license, like what people imagine. Now, the other negative I would say is the cost associated with this. Because to get an SFOC at minimum, you'd have to have drone insurance. And from my personal research, just to get individual drone insurance, you're looking at paying about $400 plus for $100,000 in liability insurance. Now, that might make sense for a commercial operator, but for a recreational person, doesn't make sense. For example, flying a 250 gram drone, maybe it's worth what, $300? You're basically paying virtually the same price for insurance and the drone. Now this kind of requires clarification still, but you guys actually mentioned this in the comments and I've read it before. Apparently, once you have an SFOC license, you're basically eliminating your ability to fly recreationally anymore, if that makes sense. So if I'm ever flying outside with an SFOC license, you have to treat everything like a commercial operation. So you can't literally just fly out there for fun. Again, like the fact with driving the car. I mean, imagine you can't like go on a road trip just for fun, just driving from place to place as if a regular person. You're treated as if you're running, say, your taxi driving business or whatever, like non-stop. That doesn't make sense in many ways as the negative. Correct me if I'm wrong again, but in that sense, it doesn't make sense for a recreational flyer to get an SFOC with that type of restriction or guideline. Now there's one point where apparently for the SFOCs, as you submit applications and they keep approving it, apparently they can give you a blanket SFOC or something like that, where you don't have to keep submitting for permission all the time. And now while that may be a counter to this, the other point was, are we ultimately wasting our time doing all this research, learning about this? Because there was this one quote, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I'll post it here in the video. There was a quote saying somewhere on the lines where eventually in the future, all this SFOC stuff that you've done, it might be useless by the time they change it to whatever the new law would be. So if you don't fly like say an approved aircraft or whatever they deem as legal now, all this is useless. So you have to do the whole thing all over again. So ultimately, since these interim laws are temporary and it's going to be changing pretty soon, is a person like me wasting my time doing all my research, spending my time and money to try to get this when ultimately it's going to change anyways? I think that's going to be kind of an important topic as well. So that's my research so far about the SFOCs. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? So far, I guess the only thing I can really conclude is that's not the solution. Like for a recreational flyer like myself that just wants to fly for fun. You're basically forcing a person to be a business person with their drone when realistically not everybody wants to be. I mean, if someone wants to drive a car just for everyday use, why are you forcing everyone to be a bus driver, to have bus driver type of restrictions and those type of vehicles? It doesn't make sense. Or I guess like with an example back there of everyone taking pictures of the cherry blossoms and all that, imagine if I told you, hey, if you want to take pictures, then go get a license just like every other movie company. How many people there are actually applying for a process to get permission to take photos or videos of the trees in a public place down there? Do you think it's reasonable for me to say you should be just like every other movie or film company? Go get a license, go get a permit before you can do that? In my opinion, that doesn't make sense. Same thing with these laws. I don't think it makes sense as well to say to people, go get an SFOC, you'll be good. Hey, if you guys have anything to add to that too, I mean, feel free to let me know, because to me, this is a constant research process. All right, other than that, I guess tomorrow I can attend the event if it doesn't rain, so we'll see about that. All right, see you guys later.